Hello everybody, I'm Zenith and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where Kat Mac and I talk about Disney products and Disney in general. So, how's it going, Kat?
Sleepy. Stayed up all night watching Bambi. And Bambi 2.
No! No. Well, okay. So, before we really talk about Bambi 2, there is something I have to bring up. Bambi is the movie that they looked at out of all the early Disney films, and they said, hey, this needs a sequel. But this wasn't just like, 4 or 5 years later. This was 64 years after the fact.
Oh my god.
And it holds the world record for the longest span of time between two consecutive installments of a franchise. What possessed people to think, okay, 64 years later, Disney isn't making any major things right now. Let's make Bambi 2. What do you think possessed them to do that?
The same thing that possessed them to make The Little Mermaid 2, and Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, and Lady and the Tramp 2, and 2, and 2, and 2, and 2, and 2.
But the thing is, those came out recent, or more recently than that, and at least they didn't make a Dumbo 2, then that would be even longer. But, I guess it was marketing reasons, but okay, I have to confess. Bambi 2 does not suck.
It doesn't. I can confirm that. It does, in fact, not suck.
I was surprised. There are several elements that make this a very good sequel. Not as good as the original, but it's worthy of being a sequel.
And even then, it's not technically a sequel. It's more of a midquel. Because unlike other films which pick up after the original stories have stopped, this one actually picks up in the middle right after Bambi's mother is shot. And it shows you everything that happened during that time afterwards, everything that Bambi went through, and pretty much it shows his relationship with his father, something that we were lacking a lot of in the original.
And this is actually a lot more valid than a lot of Disney midquels, like, Lion King 1.5. There isn't, like, a time frame where, we just randomly time skip, They have transitions and whatnot. With Bambi, there's a consecutive time gap that you don't really have any information on. Also, it serves to foreshadow a lot of elements that happen in the second half of Bambi.
Yeah, they introduce. Well, you have your all the original cast comes back. You have Bambi, Thumper, Flower, his father, Faline shows up, and then you get a few new characters, like this male deer named Rano, this real angry porcupine. Who else?
And you also have the little girl bunnies, the sisters of Thumper.
Yes, the sisters, the sisters that started off as 6 and were dwindled down to 4. I guess 2 of them died over the winter.
Buddies, no.
Damn you, man.
Yes, man. But yeah, no, nobody actually dies in this film. This is actually one of the big differences between this and Bambi is that, Bambi had the first really official Disney death. I mean, I guess you could say Snow White, but I'm not really counting that as a Disney death, really.
Yeah, we're not sure if we're counting villains or not, since it's sort of expected that villains get offed in a lot of these movies. But if you feel differently, you think we should count the villains, leave a comment and we'll consider it.
But for now, I mean, I consider that, the Snow White Evil Queen scene was just kind of like, okay, this is going to happen every Disney movie. But yeah, Bambi's mom was the first official Disney death, in my opinion. And it paved the way for a lot of, darker tones in Disney. Except in Bambi 2, they don't really take that. it's more of, okay, this is life. But I think the fact about the reason they included death in Bambi was to show that, as Captain Kirk said in Star Trek II, the way we deal with death is as important as the way we deal with life.
Exactly. And for the original Bambi, which of course was about life, the life of a deer, it made sense. So, however, in Bambi 2, that's not the case. In this case, we're not talking about the life of a deer, because that already happened. We're talking about a relationship between a father and a son.
Mm-hmm. And, I mean, first of all, it's shown over one season, really. We get a winter and a little bit of the spring, and so that's another difference from Bambi, because it doesn't show the changing of the seasons, because it doesn't really need to. It's not as much about life. It doesn't take as many pauses and, musical cues like Bambi did. But I find that a lot of the spirit of the original Bambi is in this film. So shall we start by going into the updated characters then?
Yeah, I think we should revisit the characters.
Alright, so let's talk about Bambi himself again. He's kind of different in this film. First of all, he's voiced by a different voice actor, of course, because, 64 years later.
Obviously.
Yeah. But this is more of him as a child. He's not really learning as much. He's not really like, oh, I'm learning how to talk and stuff like that. He's kind of grown up at this point, but he's still a child, and he's just trying to impress his father. And so you see him not as like a toddler or not as like a really young child, but as more of a,
I guess you could say a tween almost.
Yeah, tween. He's not quite that teenage angst level, but he's willing to prove himself. He wants to show that he can be brave. He wants to be with his father, because up until this point, he hasn't seen his father. He hasn't had time to interact with his father. And so now that he has this chance, he doesn't want to mess it up.
And especially since he lost his mother, this is the only parental figure he has left. And so, of course, Bambi's going to latch onto him. But, of course, the great prince, having no experience whatsoever in raising a child, is rather reluctant to do so.
Especially because he is a prince. I mean, princes, and especially stags, don't really raise their job is very different. Stags are supposed to protect the herd. Mothers are supposed to raise the herd.
Yeah, it's sort of like lions. Mm-hmm. So very similar in that.
And this movie actually explains, why he raised Bambi instead of just, being the stag leader, It's very different than you would expect, and it actually makes sense in context of the film. One thing that this film does with Bambi is it characterizes him a lot more, where in the first Bambi we got to see a lot of him learning and growing, but you didn't really get to see his personality as much, other than the fact that he was curious and naive. And here you get to see him a lot differently.
Yes, like we mentioned, he talks a lot more. Sometimes it gets a bit grating because, he sounds like a little kid, an annoying little kid that won't shut up. And
his voice actor is a little bit higher pitched than you're used to.
Yeah, a little trivia: the kid who voiced Bambi in the sequel also voiced Nemo in Finding Nemo.
I was surprised to learn that.
So of course, having the voice of Nemo, you can imagine his voice coming out of Bambi and him talking a lot. And like I said, that does get a bit grating at times, but for the most part, I think he captured it pretty well.
Especially because when you're at that age, like, your voice is still changing, you may be cracking and whatnot, and I think he definitely captures the youth that Bambi had. And really, when we saw young Bambi in the first movie, he didn't really talk that much because he was still learning to talk. In this film, it's kind of understandable that he would have like a different voice. And also, when we see him as an adult, he has a much more mature voice. So we really never got to see him at this point in time.
Right. So so it does fill in a lot of gaps for a lot of things, and you also see how he interacts more with his friends, and because Thumper isn't in this case not used like as a constant comic relief. Sometimes that does fall on Bambi to be the comic relief.
And I did like how that Thumper and Flower did get to have larger roles in this, because for the first movie, Flower was not there that much, and Thumper, while there a lot, he's given a lot more screen time, and his interaction with his sisters is pretty funny. And he's played up, instead of like still being, he is still that rascally rabbit, but instead of being just solely comic relief, he's also there to just, to be the voice of reason sometimes. And, he helps Bambi get the courage to confront his father and show his father that he is brave and that he is just as princely as his father is. Like, there's this point where he's like, he tells Bambi to get his courage back, and so he faces down this rival deer, and as he's running from him, he makes this incredible leap across a pretty large gap, and his father sees it, and he's like, that's my son.
And it is a bit of foreshadowing when he's older and you see him leaping across that great distance before getting shot. And after learning, that he is in fact a good jumper, he tries to perfect that, which I liked.
And he actually does by the end of the film. When he's up on the rocks, he faces the final enemy of the film, and he leaps across a gigantic chasm pretty easily to see his father. And so I think what I liked about this is I liked it gave more characterization to Bambi. I don't think he should have spoken as much. That's one of the things with this film, is that they could have trimmed some of the dialogue and made it a bit more like Bambi, but you can definitely see that they had the spirit of the original in mind when crafting the sequel, which you don't see in a lot of Disney sequels.
Oh, no, you don't.
And then Thumper, as we said, Thumper has an added role in this. In addition to helping out Bambi, there's near the end of the film, he actually helps Flower learn how to use his skunk spray. He makes him braver as a result.
And I really love how he associates bravery with making a scary face.
And he's so funny. Like, he's like this childish bunny. And he's like, you gotta be brave. And he starts like throwing bunny punches. And it's so funny and cute. And I think that I think this film, even more so than the original Bambi, captures the cuteness that Thumper had at that age. Because, I mean, you got to see Thumper and you got to see how cute he was, but he didn't have enough screen time. He wasn't the focus of the film. And so now that we're able to stop and, it isn't just about the passing of seasons and everything. We can stop. We can take a look at these characters, and we can say, okay, this is what they do right in the original. Let's expand upon that, and let's show like who they are a bit more. I mean, we get to see a bit more of Flower. Still not enough.
Yeah, Flower, for the most part, still isn't that important a character. Again, other than being, the cute sidekick.
Who's shy.
Yeah, who's also shy and bashful. He hasn't changed much. He still sounds a lot like he did back then.
Yeah, I don't... they may have actually kept the original actor if he was old enough. I don't know. But for the most part, Flower is the same way. There isn't too much to talk about in that regard. Mr. Owl, or Friend Owl, this is still his younger years, so he's pretty much the same as he was in the first half of Bambi.
Yeah, he's still the same old wise owl that gets irritated with the younger animals for a various amount of reasons. Although he isn't as against the Twitter pating or whatever as he is at the end of Bambi. I believe he still is a little bit.
He mentions it, but he isn't like the old coot status yet. Back in my day, we didn't Twitter pate. Crazy kids.
We masturbate.
So yeah, those are like the main cast. The person who really changes the most is Bambi. Um, Feline changes a little bit.
Actually, I think she changed a lot because from the first film, Feline was very eccentric, very hyper.
Very giggly.
Yes, a
She was
very
like a
giggly girl.
horny schoolgirl, yeah, horny schoolgirl status.
Yes, but in this one, she's toned down a lot. She's still pretty girly, but she doesn't leave that big of a oh my god, this girl's psycho impact.
Yeah, yeah, she's more reasonable, more rational, and you get the crush a little bit more, from her end. You can get how it works.
They do show Bambi being more shy around Feline, not because of she's such an intense personality, but more like he actually likes her.
And I think what this does a little bit more is showcase, okay, it's not just a Disney romance where they see each other one time and then later they fall in love. I mean, it was okay in the original where they had met beforehand, but in this one it actually showcases how they get closer together, and it's not just, oh hey, I see you again, I fall in love. No, it's just that we've been friends for a long time. The crush, you can see it's there, and they do kiss at the end of the film.
By accident, but it's still sweet.
Mm-hmm. And then now let's touch on the Great Prince of the Forest, played by Captain Picard.
Yes, of the Starship Enterprise. Yes, believe it or not, the Great Prince is actually voiced by Patrick Stewart, which automatically makes him awesome.
And I don't know exactly the reasoning behind this, but he was on the extras in the original DVD of Bambi. He was like the narrator and whatnot of like showing what was going on.
Well, he was being shown in Bambi 2, was being advertised at the time. That's
true. So maybe it's just because Patrick Stewart is Patrick Stewart and he advertises himself all the time. But, I have to say, he was probably the highlight of this film. He was the best voice actor there.
Absolutely.
And every time he was on screen and said his lines, he was very good. Not just in terms of acting, but like he was really well written into the script, where he had very deep lines to say, but at the same time you get the feeling that he wasn't quite right in his view on the world, Mm-hmm. And he had to be shown that, his way of thinking was okay, but he had to think of his son, and he had to think about how he felt. And so when some of the stuff he said was correct, but you can also tell that he was still feeling the death of Bambi's mother. It affected him very good, especially when Bambi brings it up. He's like, when is mother coming back? Or like he was saying something like, mother's out there somewhere, isn't she? Or whatnot. And he's like, the prince must not bring up his past, and it's not him saying something deep. It's him trying to reconcile for the fact that he still misses Bambi's mom. And you can tell by the way he just, there's one scene where he just silently goes back to sleep. And so he's secretly dealing with this grief in a way that he thinks is best.
I guess the way you could say it is that, his father probably brought him up to be, the stern, emotionless, responsible leader of the group that forsakes all of his own personal burdens in exchange for safety of others, which is good, but at the same time also, prevents him from having fun, prevents him from, letting loose,
and prevents him from having an emotional relationship with his son and from understanding his son, because a lot of this film is just like Bambi is trying to prove himself and show that, he may be still young, but he's worthy enough to be the prince's son. And Bambi's father is just like, well, he's eccentric. I don't have any experience with this. And so he asked the owl to find another suitable home for Bambi.
And And to be fair, this does happen in some animal groups where if a parent of a youngling dies, they have one of the other females, usually a mother, come in and help raise. Because you know this old saying, "It takes a village to raise a child."
Yeah.
So that's not uncommon, but
It's not even uncommon in the human world too.
true. But still, you want to see him accept Bambi, and you know that there is the potential for them to have a connection.
And as the film goes on, that connection keeps growing and growing as we see that Bambi's getting better at being like his father. He can hear the things in the forest. He can feel the sounds and the hoof prints miles away, and he's starting to become a better prince. And at the same time, he's teaching his father that, it's okay to just stop and play for a second, or like just have a good moment with your son.
And they show a really good montage of them spending time together, playing around in nature, and putting their skills up against one another. And it's a really nice scene to watch.
Especially when you get to see Patrick Stewart say woohoo.
Oh, that was good. God, that was my favorite part.
like the beginning of the film is like, a prince does not woohoo. Like a few hours later, woohoo.
Oh my God, we got to put that scene up on the page sometime. That's just because that is awesome. So yeah, both the Great Prince and Bambi go through pretty good character arcs, learning from each other, and the relationship really is what makes the movie.
And honestly, if it wasn't for this relationship, it would probably be a pretty dull movie, I would say.
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Because there's only really two other conflicts. One of them is very trivial, and the other one is kind of foreshadowing for the second half of Bambi.
Right.
So, I mean, well, let's go with the other new characters first, and then we can go from there. So we also have the rival deer.
Yes, this is one of the new characters. His name is Rano.
And it turns out that he actually is in Bambi, but he isn't named. Like, you don't actually get to see his name. He's the deer that Feline was warded off by. Like, he was trying to court Feline, and Bambi kicked his ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is him in his younger days, and of course, because, he's a rival and a big buck and everything, of course, as a kid, he's an asshole. Mm-hmm.
And I get the feeling that he was trying to look brave and strong for, like, everyone else. He was kind of putting on a front. But at the same time, he is a pretty big jerk at every time. And I have to say this, he must be a stalker, because every time he sees Bambi, he knows exactly what Bambi's been up to. He knows exactly what happened between him and his father. And there's one point I'm just like, how do you know all this?
Yeah, that confused me as well, because it's not exactly like, the herd gossips or anything.
Mm-hmm. It's not like the elephants from Dumbo, where they're just like, oh my God, I heard this bit of news.
Yeah, for the most part, I assume a lot of what goes on is kept under wraps, especially given that, the Great Prince values his status as a strong leader and wouldn't want anything like his son chickening out to ruin that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Rano is a very big jerk, and he's also full of hot air, because he tries to one-up Bambi a lot of the time, show off. And, of course, he's obsessed with himself, so he's kind of like Gaston, but without the muscle to back it up. Mm-hmm. But he is still pretty threatening, though, because he has hurt Bambi.
Yes. And there's a fight in the beginning where he manages to, hurt him both emotionally and physically. And, later on in the film, it just, as Bambi starts to get better and better and starts besting him at pretty much everything, he's just like, you can see the anger build up in him, and he's just like, okay, I have hurt you. I wish to go on hurting you.
So yeah, pretty much he's the generic bully, except again without the muscle to back up all of his talk. So that's pretty much it for the first antagonist of the film. And then our second antagonist, good old man.
Man.
Dun.
And I think Man was handled with enough dignity in this film, whereas in the first film, Man was not shown at all. And he isn't shown at all in this film. You only see signs of Man still, which is good, because if they had shown Man, that would have ruined the film.
Yeah, absolutely. They did change a few things, though. They don't have the theme for Man anymore. So you don't hear that. However, you can tell when he's there because first you'll see a flock of crows flying away that all yell, "Man, man, man." And then you'll see his dogs unleashed.
And they also have a couple things. You see a deer trap for the first time, where it's like the tin cans attached to the tree. And I think that was pretty clever, using a trap instead of like actually showing anything of Man, because it's just like it's a sign. It's like a sign that they're there. They could be there right now, or they could just not be there. It could be a leftover trap, you know?
Absolutely, and even then they also use a new trick for Man, where it's implied that he uses one of those deer calling devices, but the way it sounds to the deer is it sounds like a voice, possibly a doe, saying, "I'm here. I'm over here. Come find me."
And Bambi, of course, thinks it's his mother because he just had a dream about his mother telling him that she'll always be there in the great circle of life.
Exactly. So it is a tad creepy hearing that, because you're thinking, wait, his mother can't be alive. Wait, he's at the meadow. Oh, crap.
Yeah, and then, so I think it was really well handled. I think that there was maybe too many appearances of Man.
Well, there's only 2 appearances, but I think there was too many appearances of the dogs, personally.
Yeah.
Because in the original movie, they only used the dogs once, and that was at the last climax.
And that was what was really needed. In this, you get the dogs twice. And I do like at the end of the film that Bambi actually faces off against a pack of dogs, and he uses all the skills that he's learned, and he wins. And it was just thanks to his skills and everything he's learned from his father and, you know, from his experiences. So
yeah, I guess the reason they added the dogs a lot more was, to foreshadow when Bambi does take on the dogs at the end, that to explain, why he wasn't afraid of them like any normal deer would be. And, why and how he knew how to, ward them off and where to, like, hurt them.
Yeah, so, I mean, it does fill in a little bit of experience gap, I would say. So, it does a really good job of setting up the second half of Bambi in that regard. The other new character, well, we get 2 more new characters. The first new character we really talk about is the porcupine, and he really is only in there for 2 scenes.
Pretty much, and he's more of an inconvenience than an actual bad guy.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, you crazy kids, get off my log, which is his lawn, his yard.
Yeah, and he's an asshole too. He's a complete dick. He won't let anybody cross on his log, even though it is one of the only ways to get across. And of course, being a porcupine, obviously he's gonna, jab other animals with his quills if they get too close.
And he even tells off the great prince of the forest.
Yeah, so he's ballsy.
Yeah, I'm just like, come on, kill him, Captain Picard. He just insulted you. No,
Defend your honor.
This is beneath me, you porcupine. But, yeah, so he was just okay. He was not really there,
Right.
Yeah, and then we also have the groundhog. The second subplot of the film is that it's becoming spring again. And so the groundhog comes out and he's going to see if he sees a shadow or not, and that means spring is going to be coming closer. This subplot is unimportant, it's completely unnecessary, and it's the one thing that makes this Disney sequel a Disney sequel in the bad sense.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh hey, we need padding, so let's have this scene where we have this groundhog, he has to see his shadow, but he's completely cowardly, and he's afraid of his own shadow, and so he doesn't want to go out any time. And it's just completely pointless. It's completely unnecessary character.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
If it wasn't for this character, this film would be a lot better, I think.
Yeah, they could have cut out this scene and nothing would have been lost.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess they wanted to sort of associate it with the common American holiday.
Last holiday. Queen Latifah on skis.
But yeah, for the most part, it was pointless, and you only see him once. He never shows up again.
Mm-hmm. So those are really all the new characters and the updated characters. What did you think of the characters in Bambi 2 overall?
I thought some of them were an improvement on the original, whereas some of the originals lacked personality, and the new ones made up for it.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the development of certain characters a lot more than you did in the original. Some of the new ones I thought were kind of pointless.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only one who might have some significance is Rano, but that's only because he appears for that one scene in the original movie, and I guess it gives him a backstory. But for the most part, I didn't think any of the new characters were that necessary.
Yeah,
and
maybe the sister bunnies, because they were just there for comic relief, but they're not like super necessary.
No, the film would have ran normally without them, so you really didn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I thought Bambi, like, despite the fact that he talked a lot more than he did in the original, he still was a good character. You got to see a lot of his personality come out a lot more. And he was a fun character to watch, and you rooted for him.
And so, yeah, I think it's pretty much a toss-up. Like, the characterization is really good, but it loses a lot of the fact that, okay, in the original, it wasn't really about the characterization. It was about, okay, this is the life. And so they're two different films, and they're trying to do two different things. And I think both of them are valid. They both have their certain aspects that I like about them in terms of characters. But I would prefer the original myself.
True.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only thing that would make Bambi 2 stand out more than the original was that it had a solid plot behind it.
Yes, it was a very solid, okay, we have a father and son relationship plot, and we have this subplot of Rano, and it actually it all ties into the original film. Whereas the original film really wasn't about the plot. It was about, okay, these are the passing of seasons, the passing of time. Bambi is growing up. This is about his life and the problems he faces. And so this is, basic story, But Bambi 2 is just like, okay, well, there's a specific problem. This is a specific period of time in his life. And so we're going to detail that. And so they're both movies are doing different things, and I think they handle them both well, but I think Bambi 2 suffers a little bit from sequelitis.
Yeah, the added unnecessary characters, the changing of characters we had come to know over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the changes are good, some of them are bad, but for the most part, I wouldn't call this superior to the original at all by a long shot.
No.
But compared to other Disney sequels released at that time, this far outweighs them.
And for the fact that this is 64 years after the original, it captures a lot of what the original had pretty well. Mm-hmm. So do you want to go over the music of the film next?
Yeah, I believe so. We can go over the music. Like the original, none of the characters really sing in this. There's one scene where they sing the passage of spring for a brief period.
Yeah,
which is kind of weird and kind of uncomfortable and awkward to watch. But other than that, it's mostly background songs like in the original, except these are more updated and a little more poppy.
The thing I find with this is that the music has never been the biggest point of Bambi, but what music in Bambi originally was to set the tone, and that's what the importance of the music was. And here it's pop songs, and it works and doesn't work at the same time. It works in the sense that it is really good montage music, and you get a really good emotional connection during these songs, but I find they're way too blunt. That's where they don't work, is that a lot of the lyrics in these songs are way too straight to the point, and they're just like, okay, like, we're happy, and they pretty much basically state it in the song. We're two different people, and we're getting together, pretty much stated in the song, and so it's a little bit too obvious for my taste, but I definitely like the emotion, that the mood that is set from the songs themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that they are pretty to listen to, and despite, the obvious message, it's not, annoying, it's not grating or anything, it's not inappropriate. So I think it does, some of the songs do set up for the scenes pretty well.
It's not the Reluctant Dragon.
Oh, you're never going to let that go.
I will find a way to bring that into every podcast. But yes, for all those listening out there, this is better than the Reluctant Dragon. So it's not saying much, but the Bambi 2 actually works.
Yeah, it does. And in terms of the animation compared to the original, which is, a big part of it, I think the animation does hold up pretty well. It's true, it's newer, it's cleaner, it's crisper, and it's maybe done in a slightly different style than the original.
But it's just as good. It's not like a Disney sequel like Hunchback 2, where you look at the original and then you look at Hunchback 2, and it's like, what? Did the animators have a stroke while making this or something?
Yeah.
Like,
This is pretty superior animation for a sequel, which is really saying something.
It's better than Dumbo's was. Yeah, like it's really good animation.
Yeah, and
it's better than it has any right to be.
Absolutely, and the forest looks really good. You do feel like you're in a wild setting, and they come across some landscapes which, like a waterfall or a clearing, and it is really gorgeous to look at.
And they do take steps from the original, where they have the acid trip sequence like they do in every single Disney movie we've talked about, where he goes into a dream and he sees his mother, and it's stylized really well. Mm-hmm. And there's also a sequence where, during a fight scene, where it's intensified by the color palette, and it feels like the fight with the deer that happened in Bambi 1.
Yeah, so the color schemes are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And they always change for the mood. It's like, you can see that it's brighter when they're with the animals in the forest. You see that it's darker when they're being faced down by a man. Mm-hmm. So it's still there. All the color scheming from the original is still there. And
the animation is really the driving force here too, where we have good voice actors, we have good animation, and we have a pretty decent story here, and it's not bad. Like, I like the relationship between these two characters. So for a sequel, they could do far worse than this.
Yeah, they definitely could have done far worse, but I think they handled it pretty well for what they had. There was a few mistakes here and there, like, again, having the characters sing a part of that one song, that unnecessary groundhog scene.
Yeah.
And another thing that I noticed they tried to do, again, to reference the original, was they tried to replicate some of the scenes from the original.
In fact, one scene was copy-pasted, where Thumper wakes up Flower from his hibernation again, and it's implied this is probably only a week after he explained what hibernation is and why he hibernates.
Exactly, and that it looks almost, scene for scene. The only difference is this time Flower actually gets up. And now, if I were him, I would have gotten up only to punch him in the face and then gone back to sleep.
Yeah, but this is Flower. He's a bit shy. But, if it was me, I'd be like, bitch, I don't want to go to your damn Groundhog Festival. I'm in hibernating mode.
Exactly.
Make me sandwich.
Yeah, so that didn't really work, and they had other referencing scenes like Rano being possessive over Feline and trying to like scoot her away like they did when they were adults. And
Which I thought was very good thematic element. It wasn't a copy-pasted scene. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, this is a reference to the original.
yeah, and they even show again the same color scheme and style from when he and Bambi have their fight.
And they do get in a mock fight before the whole man scene takes place, where it's just like, okay, they start to ward each other off, and they're like, okay, you're a jerk. I'm not, I'm Bambi. I'm the Prince of the Forest. Stop being a jerk. And so it was, I think it was well done at what, the foreshadowing element, at the homage it holds towards Bambi. Because it is very much an homage film, when you think about it, where it's trying to recapture the magic that Bambi had. It's not entirely doing it justice, because, Bambi had a completely different concept at board and what it was trying to convey. But I think what Bambi 2 does right is that it recognizes the original. It celebrates the original film. Mm-hmm. And that's what a lot of sequels do not do in terms of Disney sequels.
Yeah, they pretty much just try to add on some more by basically copy and pasting the same plot, but with slightly different characters.
Or it can be completely stupid and illogical, like Beauty and the Beast, Belle's Magical Christmas. Like, what? That makes no logical sense, because they're finally just remembering this now after all this time. And, like, where did this magical organ go, and why didn't we see it in the original film? Like,
So, overall, as we've been saying, Bambi 2, good film. Not great film, but good film. Better than a lot of the other Disney sequels that came out at the time. True, it's a different plot. Characters are updated, but it doesn't take away anything. It doesn't ruin anything.
And it adds quite a bit to the original film. It adds more than it's not like a full sequel. It's not like great and amazing like Rescuers Down Under was. But at the same time, it's not horrible. It's not bad. It does enough right. It doesn't take away anything. It adds a little bit more to the original film.
Absolutely. Gets the Ephraim sequel seal of approval.
It gets the badass Angry Joe is not here seal of approval. But, so yeah, that's Bambi 2. Overall, I would say that of all the sequels I've seen, it's probably the best. Mm-hmm. Not counting Rescuers Down Under, of course. But it's still pretty damn good. I would recommend it, but I mean, if you haven't seen the original Bambi, you probably won't get a lot of the stuff that goes on. Right,
so definitely watch Bambi 1 first, because that is pretty much the whole story, and this is just, a small chunk of it that isn't acknowledged, because of course it wasn't written yet.
But, I mean, I don't know if the sequel itself justifies coming out after 64 years, though. Since, it could have been a little bit different. It could have been better. It's definitely not bad. But I don't know if the 64-year time gap was worth it for this,
I think if it came out at another point in time, like during the Renaissance, maybe they could have done a lot more with it.
Yeah.
They could have made it a big motion picture like, Rescuers Down Under.
And that's the thing, like, during the 90s was when Disney was on top in terms of animation, in terms of live action, in terms of a lot of different things. They had the budget, they had the time, and they had the effort to put into stuff like that. This came out in 2006.
Yeah, at a time where, the company was going downhill and you weren't sure if they were ever going to make any more animated movies again outside of the straight-to-DVD stuff. Mm-hmm. So I guess it was all a matter of timing. I think maybe if it came out, maybe shortly afterwards in the maybe 50s or 60s, or it came out in the 90s, it would have had a lot more going for it. But
and probably would have had more impact with everyone else.
True, but it is what it is, and it, like we said, it's good.
Yeah, go see it. Go see for yourself. Watch Bambi, then watch Bambi 2, and judge for yourself. I mean, you may not like it as much as we did, but I don't think you'll find it horrible.
Yes.
And one thing it does right, it is certainly funny. It had me laughing, it had me smiling the whole time.
And there's even a few emotional scenes. The scene where he sees his mother, I wanted to cry.
Captain Picard, no. So that was Bambi 2, guys. It was a fun experience. It was a pleasant surprise, and it is far better than that gay dragon.
Yes, completely. And for those of you wondering, this is the type of format we're going to be going with from now on. So any straight-to-DVD sequel will be reviewed right after the original, just so, the original is kept fresh in our minds, and so we know we can reference it. Because I think if we wait too long...
We'll forget, and we might even forget to do the sequel, because a lot of these, they're not documented on the main Disney page.
Exactly. So just for the sake of, convenience and continuity, we're just gonna do, all the sequels in order, and I mean all the sequels, and maybe even a few TV shows that tie into it.
Yeah, like when we do the Kim Possible movies, we'll do an episode on the TV show and whatnot, so...
Exactly. So expect this in future podcasts.
And expect Phineas and Ferb eventually. Yay!
I haven't watched it fully, but I will.
But yeah, so that was Bambi 2. Next time we are going into the dark ages of the 40s.
I wouldn't call it dark ages, but it was a weird time.
It was a time where they weren't really making any full animated features. A lot of it was purely either educational or just, hey, this is a tour of Disney Factory type thing.
Or, little, clip shows.
Yeah, and so most of it was half live action and half animated. And some of it I have seen, some of it I haven't. And then the last animated feature we have to talk about in the 40s is The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. But we still have maybe 5 or 6 films before that, so...
Yeah, we have a good couple, but we'll tackle them as we come along. For next time, I believe the next on our list is Saludos de Amigos.
Yep, it's Saludos Amigos.
Saludos Amigos, yes. So we are going down to Brazil, people.
And we're going to have some fun with the Spanish accents. It's going to be a lot of fun.
But they speak Portuguese down there.
The audience doesn't have to know that.
So yeah, it's Saludos Amigos and then the Three Caballeros.
No, actually, there's one before that.
Oh, yes. We also have Victory Through Air Power.
Which, as far as we can tell, Victory Through Air Power is a demonstration of the idea of how... acquiring air power or acquiring lots of jet planes and would make people win the war.
We don't expect much from this one.
Yeah, as a couple people have stated in the chat, this is their least favorite film next to Reluctant Dragon. So
right. So, but again, we said we'd cover all the Disney films, so we'll tackle this one, and you can all judge for yourselves, as will we.
But anyway, next time we have Saludos Amigos, and we're going to have fun.
Yay!
But anyway, thank you guys for watching the Disney debate. If you have any comments, criticisms, suggestions, or anything else, please leave them at zenithrule.blip.tv. If you have a Discus, Twitter, or Facebook, you can leave comments there. Or you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/thedisneydebate. Or you can look at our Facebook pages at facebook.com/zenithrule and facebook.com/Kat Mac, I believe.
Yes.
And also we have Twitter, so you can follow us at twitter.com/zenithrule and twitter.com/EphraimTRabbit. And I am Zenithrule.
And I'm Kat Mac /CatTCritic/EphraimTRabbit.
/Fluttershy. She made me watch My Little Pony today.
Yes, I am converting him on behalf of bronies everywhere. Yay!
And we'll see you next time.
TTFN, ta-ta for now.
Later.
Thank you for watching the Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.